What's up, everybody? My name is Doug, and this is Leaving the Dream. Today, we have a special edition of the podcast. I'm going to have my Uncle Mike, who's also my godfather, on. He's just one of the closest people to me in the world, and this is a new segment of Leaving the Dream called, what should I call this segment?
You remember the time? That's how they always usually start off.
What's up, man? Maybe we'll call it Remember the Time. First of all, my story kind of starts with you. I mean, you introduced my parents, and you were always there, and you've always been there. And to this day, I'm closer to you than anyone in the family. So I figured, you know what, I might as well start with, where were you born? How old are you in order of all the brothers and sisters? Like, how many are there, and what number are you?
We're born in all parts of California. I don't know how this happened, but I was born in North Hollywood, California, in 1964. So that means that Shannon, Joshua, Kirk, Brian,
and then you,
me, and then Russell, and then Cookie.
Really? My mom is the oldest?
Then Leo, then Yvonne, and then Jimmy, and then Joey. And I was in Hollywood. Cookie was, I think, in Santa Barbara. You may know that one.
She said LA. It says LA on her birth certificate.
Yeah, okay. And then Russell was born in Santa Cruz.
And then Brian and Kirk were born in Detroit?
Yep.
So Joshua was born to Joe and Rose.
That was in the Mojave Desert. Now, it's funny because when I moved out to California, I lived a street away from my brother and never even knew he lived there.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I lived on like Avenue K and he lived on Avenue J or something.
Are you serious? How'd you figure that out?
We were talking about where we used to live in California, and he said, "You live in Palmdale?" I said, "Yeah." "What street?" I said, "I lived on Avenue K." He goes, "I lived on Avenue J, right around the corner."
No way, dude.
Oh my God. Now,
you
Dad
lived next to your brother.
Yes, and never even knew it. Dad told us we had a brother, but he said he was an Indian. Now, when Dad talked about Indian, he made it look like a feather in your hair, headdress Indian. He didn't mean, and he did that on purpose. And he didn't want to say Mexican, I think.
That's all. So Joshua is Mexican? Or is he Mexican Indian? Do you know? I lost your mic. Oh, right when we're getting to the good stuff, bro, I swear. I love that dude. He's a good dude. He's always been there for me, man. One thing, Mike has always been there for me whenever I needed him. He's a hard worker. He's got a big heart. He's a good dude. He's so funny, too. Yeah, buddy.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So, Jimmy Joey in Detroit, then Leo and Yvonne in Detroit, then Grandpa moves to California, where he has the Fab Five, Russ, Cookie, Mike, Brian, and Kirk. No, Russ, Cookie, and Mike. And then comes back to Detroit, has Brian and Kirk. And then goes back out to California and has Joshua, and then comes back to Detroit and has Shannon.
Correct.
Okay. How old were Jimmy and Joey when you were growing up? Like, how much older were they than you? So you're born in 1964. What is your earliest memory?
My earliest memory is sitting on a sit-and-spin in the basement of the house on Hazelwood in Hazel Park. You know, they had that crazy where you sit there and you take a wheel and you sit on it and spin. That was my first memory as a child.
Wow. How old are you think?
I was probably 2 years old.
So at 2 years old, who's alive?
I remember my dad living with my mom, which is very rare. We lived across the street from our grandpa and grandma, and my aunt lived behind them. So
what grandpa and grandma? You mean grandpa?
Grandpa Hart.
He lived on Hazelwood.
Yeah, right across the street from us.
Oh, so you guys lived across the street from his house?
Yes, we did.
Wow.
And my aunt, the Bear Camps, they lived behind my grandma. So We're all just a tight-knit little running back and forth to all the houses.
Wow, what a trip. I didn't know you grew up over there.
Well, I didn't grow up. It didn't last too long when Mom and Dad got a divorce.
When did they divorce?
They moved to 50 West Granite, and then shortly after that is when we got a divorce.
When was that?
Now, I remember being 2 years old. I would say in 1966, maybe 1967, we moved to 50 West Granite because my dad had a hot rod. It was the procrastinator. And I remember him fixing that hot rod in the driveway of 50 West Granite. And I remember we had a shed full of newspapers. We used to do newspaper drives and collect the money for the recycled newspaper. And my dad also had a big van in the back. And he used to sell his blood back then too for money. He'd do anything for money.
Wow.
But yeah, and then shortly after us moving to 50 West Granite is when all hell broke loose, and they got a divorce and life changed everything.
So you mean before they got divorced, life was actually okay?
Yeah, I remember a mom and a dad, grandma and grandpa across the street, aunt and uncle behind them, cousins.
So that was until 1967, which would have made you 3.
Yeah.
So life was good till you were 3, and my mom at that point was 5.
Yes.
So I have a picture of my mom at her 5th birthday, and she's like blowing out a cake or playing in a dollhouse that burned down, I guess. The house burned down.
That was 50 West Granite. Yep.
50 West Granite burned down?
We had a fire. It didn't burn down. I lost my medal, my wrestling medal. The only medal I ever won.
What caught on fire?
The electrical outlet right by the front door on the inside of the house.
Wow. Did you guys lose everything?
It burned that whole wall, but they came and put the fire out and salvaged the house. So we still lived in it after that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So it was at 50 West Granite that Grandma and Grandpa got divorced.
Yep. My dad ended up cheating on my mom, but my mom was testing your grandpa, to see if he would, and he did. Now, my mom told me this story.
Really?
She said that, yeah.
How old were you when she told you this?
She told me that with her own mouth.
How old was she?
She said, how old was she when they got a divorce?
Like when she was older, she told you this? Like when did she tell you?
Yeah, we lived in Warren Manor Apartments on 8 Mile and DeQuinder there. And I asked her, I said, why did you get a divorce? Because I was, as a kid, you're mad. You're mad. You're like, why did you get a divorce? You could have had a good family. And she said, well, your dad cheated on me. But in his defense, I kind of was seeing if he would. I told my girlfriend to see if he would, and he did. And that was the end of that.
So she told her girlfriend to sleep with him?
To see if he would sleep with her.
And he slept with her, or he decided to sleep with her?
He actually let him sleep with her.
Wow.
Like in those times, it was the 60s. I don't know if, I would have said, if I was my mom, see if he will. And if it gets to that point, just say, no, you're being set up. And, she just wanted to see if you would,
Right. But let's be honest, any girl who takes that challenge and says, any girl whose friend says, hey, will you try to sleep with my boyfriend and let me know if he does it? They're also the girl that will sleep with your boyfriend. Let's be honest. Bro.
That's the one you're going to test out, right?
Yeah. Because the girl that's not going to sleep with your husband, when you go to her and say, hey, man, I think my husband wants to sleep with you. Will you try to sleep with him? She's going to say, no, I'm not going to sleep with your husband.
Right.
But the girl is like, yeah, let me see what I can do.
Yeah, you're not going to go to a Christian girl who goes to church every Sunday and is very religious and ask her that. Right.
So when was Grandpa born?
Grandpa was born in 32, and I have his license downstairs, but we can go back and look at that later. It might have been 31.
So that means in 1967 on 50 West Granite, he was 34. So
yeah,
he was 34 when he moved to 50 West Granite and then cheated on Grandma.
Yeah.
and I'm 38. So
now, these years could vary 1 or 2 years either way. I'm just kind of getting, as a young kid, trying to get the best year I can.
So he cheats on grandma with her friend, and then they divorce. Why did things go horribly wrong after that? Like, what is it? Like, if everything was great while they were together, right? Or was, because I know that grandma had a drinking problem. I know that grandpa had a women and, responsibility problem. And they would, like, my whole life I've heard stories of one of them was gone at any given time. Most of your life, nobody was there. But occasionally there'd be these weird moments where everyone was living in the house together for a year or two, and then 7,000 stories comes out of that 1 year or two. And then there's the quiet years where you guys were all split up or whatever. So what changed when they split up? Did someone leave first?
Well, keep in mind, until this point, there was no alcoholic mother or father, womanizing father. At the time, we had a great family. But what happened is, after dad cheated on my mom retaliated by cheating on my dad with the guy at the Lawson's party store at the corner, a couple houses down. There was a Lawson's party store. His name was Danny. Now, his brother ended up marrying Yvonne, but that's another story. But he just worked up at the damn store, and mom ended up sleeping with him. My dad found out that and lost it. He lost his marbles and just left the state of Michigan.
Wow.
It wasn't a happy understanding that we're going to divorce and I'll take care of the kids and pay child support. It was, you screwed me, I'm going to screw you. Okay, see you later. I never want to see you again. Dad, I think, left Michigan with the intentions of never seeing us again.
Really?
Yeah, it was a.
So you guys stayed with her. He just dug out.
He just said later, see you later. I'll see you when you're all grown up. Took off.
So he took no kids with him?
Nope.
And that was in 1967.
Now, this could be wrong, but I want to say between 67 and 68, 69, somewhere in that area.
Mike, it has to be later because Brian and Kirk was born in 70. So that means at least through 69, they were talking.
Yeah. I want to say when Kirk came home from the hospital, my dad was not there. So you're
really?
Right. Yeah. I remember mom coming home and dad wasn't there.
Wow. So that means 1970, he was gone. So
let's say 69 is when my dad split.
So you guys moved to 50 West Granite when you were 3, and it took a couple years for everything to fall apart.
No, I'm just going by my 3-year-old memory at the time. So yeah, it's basically about it.
So he cheats on her, she cheats on him, he digs out, she was pregnant.
Yep.
Okay. So so Kirk never had a dad at home from day one, basically.
No. If it wasn't for your mom, we wouldn't have had anybody at the time. So
and then Brian was only a year and a half. He was still a baby.
Yeah,
when Grandpa left.
He had one lazy eye and the whole 9 yards.
So at this point, my mom's 9 years old.
Taking care of us.
Wow. So she's 9, taking care of a 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn with Grandma. Grandma was still there.
Yes.
How long until Grandma left?
Grandma left right away after the divorce. I mean, she was there at spotty times. She would show up. She'd be missing for months at a time.
So she would just leave my mom with the babies?
Yeah.
Like babies?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Like my mom gave babies bottles?
Yes.
At 10 years old?
Yeah.
That's
believe it or not.
Crazy, Mike.
That is crazy. She is a matriarch. She is a saint.
My mom, because listen, the numbers don't lie. We know Kirk was born in 70, and you're saying when he came home, Grandpa was gone.
Yeah.
So we know that my mom is 9 years old, Grandpa's gone.
Yep.
And if my
and
mom...
At that time, now, just to throw this in here, at that time, Leo was a teenager, and he just split. He was never home. He never really helped take care of us, but he just showed up, slept on the couch, and left. So Cookie was kind of on her own.
He'd give you guys quarters and food sometimes. I remember hearing some stuff.
That was it. A quarter here and there, and then he was gone again. So that
and
was
what was
basically
Leo?
your mom.
So what was Leo doing at the time?
Leo was a frustrated teenager. Looked like Greg Brady from the Brady Bunch, almost identical. At that time, he was building hot rods and just living his teenage life. You know, he didn't care about anything about himself at the time. Probably now still, but don't show Leo this. Anyway, he just really just did his own thing. He came in and left and just partied, and you know, once in a while, you know, he'd bring Jerry Walker around and all his friends, and also his friends would chase us when we ran away and smack us down when they caught us. So it was a game with them. It was a cat and mouse game between me and Russell and
How old is Leo?
Leo is...
He's older than my mom.
Yeah.
Much older?
How old is your mom?
My mom was born in 61, so she's 59. She's 58.
Leo is got to be at least 60 or 61, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Oh, really? So he's like 3-4 years
old. 7 years older than me, Leo.
7.
That would be 62.
Okay. So if he's 7 years older than you, that would put him in 57 he was born.
And again, these times could be off a little bit, but I'm pretty sure on that.
But either way, he's like 4 years older than my mom. So he's only 13 when Joe leaves. But he was never around for Joe anyway, right? He was already gone?
No, well, Dad actually showed him a lot of stuff. Showed him how to use tools.
Where was Leo's dad?
Leo's dad was a guy named Leo. I don't know why my mom and Leo broke up, but now Leo had the life of a good teenager growing up with my mom and dad. They started out in California. Leo had go-karts. Leo kind of grew up the American dream until this happened. So this really messed Leo up. You know, Leo had a great childhood with my mom and my dad. And Leo refused to believe it. And after that, he just went nuts. Leo went crazy. Just did what he wanted, drugs, you know, having parties over our house. I remember when I was a kid, we had a oil lamp and there was doobies all over and there was naked women running around. And, you know, I was just, you know, at that time, I remember I was probably around 7, 8. So, yeah, Leo just... Where
were Yvonne and Leo around when you guys were living?
Yeah, Yvonne and Leo really didn't help. Yvonne, I remember beating us a lot with like coat hangers or curtain rods and the little racetracks from the Hot Wheels and things like that. But they just kind of showed up and left. They didn't really take responsibility.
Why did my mom?
Huh?
Was it because they had a different dad, you think?
That might have been it. Cookie might have just thought, these kids are my responsibility. These are my blood brother and sisters. And at the time, Yvonne and Leo were trying to figure out who they were. And in their defense, I mean, they were so young, and they were just like, you know what? No, I'm not going to do this. I'm too young to do this. And Cookie was at the age where she was too young to say I'm leaving anywhere. So she basically said,
I see what you're saying. You're right. She couldn't. Yvonne and Leo could leave and survive.
Yes.
My mom couldn't. She needed you guys as much as, you know what I mean?
She needed to have a family there. You know?
Yeah. So by the time Grandpa leaves and goes out to California, Leo and Yvonne are still around, like occasionally. They don't live with you guys.
They do. They drop in, spend the night. They leave for a week or two. Maybe a month, come back, drop back in. That's all I remember. I don't remember them being there all the time.
So they live with you guys. So there's a total of 7 kids living with you guys, no parents, essentially.
Exactly. My mom was always gone. She'd show up once in a while.
Where would she go?
She would go, we'd catch her at the bars, like there was like an Acorn bar on John R. and 8.5 Mile Road on the corner there. Then there was the shanty she would go to. That's on.
So what do you mean?
That.
She would go to the bar and then just not come home for months? Like, what would she live with somebody and then like
sit there? And she would go home with my Aunt Janie or go home with someone she met, and a lot of times she wouldn't come home. She would just we would go to a certain few bars and kind of figure out where she was or where she had been.
Right.
But when
she was born in what, 1940?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because she died at 52 years old in 1992. So that means she was born in 40. So in 1967, she was 27 years old when they split up. When do you think she left? Like, how long after Grandpa left was she around? Like, Kirk was a baby. Like, how old do you think Kirk was?
This is what happened. My mom met Danny.
The guy she cheated on Grandpa with.
Now, he moved right into our house right after that happened.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. So she slept with Danny. Grandpa leaves. Danny moves right in.
Right.
Are you on 50 West Granite?
We are on 50 West Granite. Danny was very abusive. Now, Danny had a personal
What's his
problem.
name? Danny what?
Danny Williams.
What happened to him?
And that's where Yvonne got her last name, from his brother.
Oh, wait. So Yvonne, the daughter of Roberta, married her stepdad's brother.
All right, so Danny has a brother named Jim, ends up marrying Yvonne and having Tracy and Tracy's brother. So Danny moves in. Danny tries to be mine and Russell's father and us as fathers. Now, at that time, we were going through elementary school, and he wanted us to be football players and all that, but the best you can be and all that. But I remember when my mom said, hey, I'm like, at that time, my mom worked. She had to, work while he stayed at home. So he would tell me, hey, as soon as your mom leaves, I'm going to pick you up and I'm going to beat the living crap out of you. And I would tell my mom, he just said he was going to beat me up when you leave. And she said, no, he's not going to do that. As soon as she left, I could see her in her car in a driveway. My arm would be up in the air and he would be beating the crap out of me, literally, while she was pulling out of the driveway. This guy would line me and Russell up and say, I want you two to race. And as soon as whoever lost, of course, Russell would lose all the time because I didn't want my butt beat. So as soon as we would lose, you would get smacked in the face and thrown in a garbage can. And this guy would beat your butt to a bloody pulp.
You can swear.
He would throw your ass in a closet and leave you there and tell you got to stay in that closet. So he was very abusive. We found out later he did heroin and LSD and all that, and he ended up getting decapitated later in life in a car accident. So
he was decapitated in a car accident?
Yes, he was. Karma, right?
Wow, where? In Detroit?
I don't remember where. I just heard the news.
Wow. So Danny moves right in, and how long was Danny there?
Danny, I want to say, was there for a couple of years. Very abusive time in my life. It was horrible. I don't remember exactly how long, but I remember it was traumatizing. Very traumatizing.
Kirk was Grandma's last kid.
Yep.
Kirk was her baby.
Yep.
And Danny came around for a couple years, but only lived at 50 West Granite with you guys. So you guys stayed at 50 West Granite the whole time? Yes.
Now, during this period of time, my mom gets rid of Danny and meets Carlos.
Oh, which is even worse.
Now, when she meets Carlos, he lives on Woodward Heights, and there's a park right there. It's where we had Kirk's memorial there, that park. Okay? So how we find this out is Mom's missing for a long period of time, and we're looking for Mom. And me and Russell just happened to be walking through the neighborhood.
Well, let me ask you this before you keep going, because I want to get to that. I just want to know, so at this point, you had said there was this clear period where there was no alcoholism, there was no womanizing, right? But all of a sudden, Grandpa cheats on Grandma, leaves. Grandma cheats on Grandpa, or, whatever, and then leaves. Grandpa leaves. Does Grandma start drinking right away?
Obviously, because she starts going to bars right away.
Okay, so right away she starts drinking. so she's with Danny, but you found out later he was doing drugs. Was Grandma doing drugs then?
I'm not sure, but I remember Danny having weed at our house and having people come over and smoking weed right in front of us. So there was probably drugs going on. Yeah, I think my mom was at the time just turned into smoking weed because my dad was dead against any drugs or alcohol. So,
really?
Yeah, he's very strict on drugs and alcohol.
So nothing hard with Danny. Your grandma wasn't doing anything hard. She was just smoking bud.
I think so, and maybe having a beer. You know, wasn't an alcoholic at the time.
But then after Danny, because she met him at the Lawson store, but after Danny, which I'm sure was tumultuous and he was abusive, and was he abusive to her too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then they break up. Was that like fireworks, or was it like?
When Danny threw her down the steps and she broke her legs, that told me that he was abusive, and he cut her throat with a knife.
She broke her legs?
Yeah. I remember she had a cigarette, and I remember him doing it. He threw her right down the steps. I remember her cigarette ashes, like the embers, as she flew down the steps. Broke her legs. I think there was just one leg, and then later on cut her throat too, with a knife. So the abusive started as soon as my dad left. My mom started getting physically abused by men.
So then that's probably when she started drinking heavy.
Yeah.
And then that's when she meets Carlos, probably at a bar.
Yeah, understandably to numb her son.
Oh, for sure. Was Carlos a crackhead or anything? Was he just an alcoholic?
Carlos ended up going to prison for taking down about 20 heroin dealers, and it was in a Detroit newspaper. So really? Carlos at the time was on heroin, very abusive, smoked weed, drank, probably did coke, did everything. At the time, I don't think they had crack. I think at that time it was just coke.
You're right. Crack was the 80s, the 70s, 80s.
Yeah, coke, heroin, and pills and stuff like that.
Okay. So a couple years after Danny, Kirk's probably 2 years old now, 2 or 3 years old.
Yeah. And
Carlos is now the guy.
Yep.
So if you had to guess based on your memory, how old is Kirk? Like when you're thinking Carlos, Kirk is a baby still? Like think Oakland's 5.
I would say at this time, Kirk is probably 5.
5 years. So Kirk was 5 and she was with Carlos.
Yeah, I think that's when she met Carlos then.
Okay, and then
I think that Danny thing might have lasted longer than I thought it was, but I block out a lot of stuff.
Sure.
You know.
So now she's with Carlos. Was he abusive right away? And
not at first.
Was this the period where she was leaving? Like was she like gone when she met Carlos and then came back with him, or like how did that work?
Yes. She was gone at bars all the time. God knows what she was doing, but I remember looking out the window waiting for my mom to come home, and she never did. So, yeah, and in that time, I was running away from the house a lot as a young kid, walking the streets, sleeping outside, stuff like that.
Do you remember not sleeping? You remember sleeping on the street?
I remember sleeping underneath the carpet outside all night long, and I could hear my mom. At that time, I heard my mom calling me. The one time she did stay home. But I don't know why I ran away. I think I just didn't want to accept anything that was going on. I just ran away. I slept in friends' boats and friends' garages and friends' cars and friends' houses.
And you're like 8.
Yes, 8 years old. Walking the streets until 2 and 3 in the morning. I'm surprised cops didn't say, hey, what are you doing? But we would hide from the cops. And we would just walk down John R. or just walk around all Hazel Park all night long.
You had told me a story about a period where she was gone and then you like ran into her.
Yeah, after Danny, my mom was never around. Cookie was taking care of us. We were walking through Hazel Park and I looked over and my mom was suntanning on a lounge chair.
How long had it been since you'd seen her?
She freaked out when we saw her, and she didn't want us to really know that she was seeing this guy that lived there. But then we're like, we need a drink, we're thirsty, and we gotta pee and all this stuff, So she took us, it was an upstairs loft right there. And she was living there with Carlos, but I think she was paying the rent. I think she was actually living there and not at our house at that time. I just had the feeling that that was her place because it had the wicker, it had all the stuff my mom liked, and we went in there and we met Carlos.
That's how you met Carlos.
We thought he was cool. He was Puerto Rican. He was, you know, a handsome guy. He had a cool hat on, and he was really cool to us and stuff. And we thought he was cool at the time.
How old were you?
I don't know. 10, 9, 10.
And so how long had it been since you'd seen Grandma Bobby when you ran into her there?
At that time, about a month. She was missing for a while. That's why she was surprised to see us. I think she just planned on moving out, just never coming back. But then she ran into us.
Do you think maybe she had only told Carlos so much?
Yeah, I do.
Like he maybe didn't know about you guys at first?
Right. And then I think Carlos started asking her about us because Carlos was a family guy, as beautiful as he was. He had a big Puerto Rican family, brothers and all that. So he probably started asking her and probably got to her a little bit. And then at that time, we had already lost the house because at that time, don't forget, I think my mom had moved out and stopped paying rent on 50 West Granite. And I think Cookie could only do so much, and then that was it. At that time, we had moved out. I think we lived in Hazel Park somewhere closer to 8 Mile. And that's when Carlos moved in with my mom there on Hayes and West End.
So you guys went from 50 West Granite to Hayes?
To 464 Hayes on West End, Hayes Street in Hazel Park.
You guys probably lost the house because my mom couldn't pay rent or whatever. Because at this time,
your mom could only do so much. I mean, thank God she was smart enough to get us food stamps. Your mom.
You got an approximate timestamp here when Grandma Bobby and Carlos move into 464 Hayes with you guys? Like, how old are you guys?
I was probably, I want to say, yeah, that went on for a while with her not living there.
Put it this way: how old is Kirk? Is he a baby, or he's not a baby anymore?
Kirk's still young. I mean, I don't know how old Kirk was, but I could tell you at that time I was 11 because I had an operation at the time, and I remember I was 11 years old.
You had an operation?
Yeah, that could be on a different episode.
Okay, so that's 75.
It had to do with a penis.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. You only had the vagina for 4 years, right, before they replaced it again? All right, so this
Strike that off the record, please.
If you're 11, this is 1975.
Yep.
She moves in with Carlos in 1975 into Hayes. She'd already been with him for 4 or 5 years at this point, probably.
Yeah, now I might have missed something, like a flat. My mom moved to a flat in Hazel Park.
Sure.
Like Cookie still tried to keep everything going. I don't know. It was kind of a weird time at that time. But yeah, I know for sure it was when I was 11 years old when I moved over to Hayes Street.
Who's all living there now? Is everyone still together? Like
me, Kirk, and Brian, and I think Russ at the time lived with my dad, and Cookie lived there too. Me, Kirk, Brian, and Cookie.
So Russ is the only one that lived out in California.
Well, at the time, no. Dad worked at the shop. He came back to Michigan and was in Michigan.
Oh, so when he left and then got Rose pregnant, he came back right away?
Yeah. Well, he came back. I don't know about right away because I was too young to remember. But I do remember when I was in wrestling. I was in 2nd grade. So how old would that make me? Dad came and met me and said, I heard you won the wrestling tournament. I'm proud of you, and gave me a bunch of change at Fun Night at Webster Elementary. So he was back in Michigan. He only left for a couple of years, I think, before he came back.
So what year was that when you won that wrestling thing, you think?
I was 8 years old. So 64, 5, 6, 6, 7,
so 72.
72. He was back giving me change.
So it's 72. She's already with Carlos, and he's back.
Yep.
So by 75, when you guys move into Hayes, he's been back for at least 3 years.
Now let me think about this for a minute, because I was in 5th grade, still living on 50 West Granite.
So 5th grade, you're 10, and you moved in 67. So
that's right. Yeah, that's a perfect timeline. So yeah, it was 11 when I moved on Hayes. Yep.
So 74, you're at 50 West Granite in 1974. You move into 75, which makes you 11. So yeah, everything's good. So that whole time, so where was Grandpa during the time where Carlos is beating your mom?
Now Grandpa was working at the shop, and he did not know about this yet. Leo had already moved out and was with some friends, and I remember Leo showing up one day and beating the shit out of Carlos. Leo, Jerry Walker, Jim Lapierre, Kirk Walker, a couple other guys.
Were you there when it happened?
I wasn't in there. I heard it was going to happen, so I left.
How old were you?
11. So now the repercussion, I just left out of the house for a while. Now the repercussion of this is when Carlos gets beat, that means we're going to get beat. So I didn't want this to happen because in a way I wanted him to just take him away and just kill him. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I stayed awake at night every night listening to my mom get beat literally to death. And she's a small woman, and that's hard when you're 11 years old. You're listening to your mom get beat in the next room. And she's screaming, you know. A couple of times I had to run to my neighbors, and he said, just call the police, go back home. Like at that time, I don't know, it was weird in the 70s. There wasn't social media, people was like mind your own business type, you know, back then. But it was hard to hear my mom get beat every day. And we used to have a baseball bat and a can of aerosol hairspray. And we thought, if he comes in the room looking for us, we're going to spray him and then I'll hit him with the bat. So me and Brian had a plan. At the time, Kirk was too young to be involved in the plan. But yeah, he would beat her a lot. And then my mom would say, my dad's coming to visit, and he would not show up a lot. He wouldn't even show up on Hayes. So my dad didn't want to visit for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it was too hard for him to see my mom at the time. Because don't forget, they're still kind of young. They're in their 30s, right? And
yeah,
I remember her saying, your dad will be here this weekend at this time. I remember waiting all day, and I had a plan. I was going to run, jump the fence, say hi to Dad, and it never happened. So that was the end of that for a while. So I can't remember how long we stayed there. It was during the Helter. I remember it was during the Helter Skelter.
Really?
When Charles Manson had done those terrible things. I remember it was in the news still a lot.
Wow.
They already had written books and everything about it. It was crazy. Now, 50 West Granite is when the Oakland County child killer was around, and that scared me to death, too. Guarantee you he saw me a few times walking the streets, that guy.
Hey, poor Mike. He gets rejected from his mom, from his dad, and can't even get molested properly by the Oakland County serial killer.
Yeah.
Dang. Yeah, dude, I wonder how many times you walked by his sweaty face.
Yeah. We're looking for a gremlin with a hockey stick emblem on it. But Leo had a friend named Fred Bourgeois, and he was like 10 years older than everybody. He always hang out in this convertible red car, and he was a perv. He would always, Leo told me later on that he would always try to grab their thing or whatever like that. And I think he was the Oakland County child killer myself.
Who?
Fred Bourgeois, this guy that would hang around Leo and all his friends and buy him stuff, buy him weed, buy him food, whatever, give him rides.
Wow. So you guys move into, so when, I remember you telling me that you got chased home from school because
Okay, so right after Hayes, they lost that house and we moved to Detroit.
Oh, so after Hayes, you moved to Detroit. Were you at Hayes long?
I don't think so. I want to say about a year.
She stays with Carlos. So in like, say 76, you're 12 years old. You guys moved to Detroit.
Yeah. At this time, we go to 8 Mile and Schaefer on Stansbury Street. And this is right off of 8 Mile, between 8 Mile and 7.5 Mile. And it is a rough neighborhood. That was when Mayor Coleman Young was the mayor.
This is after Hayes.
Yes.
So you moved to Stansbury.
Stuck with him after getting beat by Carlos so many times. Stuck with him. And ends up moving into a house on Stansbury Street.
Now at this point, she's with Carlos. You guys are all together except Russ is living with Grandpa, who's still in Detroit, who's in Detroit now.
My dad dropped Russell back off. My dad dropped Russell back off at that time to live with us again.
Where?
On Stansbury in Detroit.
Oh, so right around the time when you move into Detroit, Russ comes back.
Yeah.
Okay.
For a short period of time.
So we're talking 1976. My mom's 16. Kirk is 6.
Yeah.
So her youngest brother is 6 years old. She's 16. She's been raising him since wherever.
Your mom goes to Cody High School at the time.
My mom went to Cody High School. Where were you going to school?
I was going to Harding Elementary School on Schaefer and 6 Mile. Oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't Harding. I can't remember the name of that school. Bobian, that's what it was. It was Bobian Middle School on 6 Mile and Schaefer. Harding was in Detroit when we eventually moved to Detroit.
All right, so then you're going to school with Brian, Kirk, and Russ, roughly. Same schools? No, not Kirk, because Kirk is 6.
Yeah. Russell stays with us only when school was out. So, Russ was with us. That's right. Because we went to the school and they said, we recommend your kids do not go to this school. It's an all-black school, and your 2 sons will be the only white people in this school. So when we went to this school, we were literally the only white people except a white girl and a white boy that were brothers, and they had red hair, and they talked like they were black. They did not want anything to do with us. We tried to befriend them, and they said, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about, man." They had they did not want to get close with us because they knew that would be getting their ass beat.
Yeah, they had already planted themselves well. They didn't need you guys.
Yes, and they were doing well. They were thriving, going to class. No one was messing with them. But us, on the other hand, was a different story.
So here's the thing. My mom told me she dropped out of school in 9th grade. You're 16. That means at this point, my mom drops out. She said she was in Highland Park.
Your mom went to that school, I think, for a day and said, "I cannot do this."
She told me that some kid chased her, was petting her hair in the
me.
She told me that a guy chased her with a meat cleaver and was going to chop off her hair.
Really?
Yeah, her last day of school, she was chased with a knife. A guy was trying to chop her hair off because I guess it was really long. And she ran from him in the cafeteria and then ran away from the school and called Wendy Tassone, who picked her up, and she said she never went back to school.
Yeah. That sounds about right. I mean, I don't know about the meat cleaver story or how.
Where was that at?
That was when she went to Cody High School.
Oh, really?
That was the one in the movie with Eddie Murphy, the same school he went to when he was a cop in Detroit.
Yeah.
They actually had the police commissioner from Detroit, and they had the school he went to, Cody High. But the same kind of story with me is I used to get my hair petted a lot because at the time it was blonde, but they would just touch my hair and pet it all the time in lunch line and stuff. And you can't really say, "Get away from my hair" or anything like that, because next thing you know, you get punched in the face by a female,
Right.
And it'd be the girls all the time would just play with my hair. And then I think the guys would get jealous sometimes, and they would take a lock on their hand and hit me on the back of the head, and my head would bleed. And then you couldn't say anything because there's 10 of them standing there. And they were just so this is a flip side of racism that a lot of people don't see in life.
Right. Poor white people, basically. Poor white kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember walking down the alleys with me and Russell. Now, my mom did not. She worked at Chrysler, but Carlos took all her money. Carlos worked at Burger King and just never brought home any money. So this is the point where we have to turn the conversation to me and Russell had to go steal groceries, basically. We go to the store. Now, at the time, Roots came out. At the worst time of our lives, Roots the movie comes out. when we are in an all-black neighborhood. Now, we are walking home. We actually took the groceries, put them in a cart, and pushed them out the door. And then we grabbed the groceries out of the carts and we're walking down the alley. We had steaks, we had everything. And I remember you can see literally in the alleys drug needles, like heroin needles and all kinds of stuff. The black people were at a picnic and they were going, roots, roots, roots. And they all started, like 20 of them were jumping the fence to come beat our ass. The matriarch of the family said, stop. You guys don't do that to those white people. Karma will get you. Just leave them alone. They got to us. They were going to beat our ass. And we ended up walking home and getting the groceries. But my point is at the time, it was a reverse racism that a lot of people don't get to see. They don't get to see that side of it. And,
sure.
and it was a big part of my life.
Sure.
How
She's brought me some coffee.
All right.
I don't drink coffee. He screamed, Doreen. So you go into the office to get some coffee, and there was a donut. Or there'd be pizza at odd hours of the day. There was always something like that.
Yeah.
But I remember eating their food all the time. They would get upset too. Anyway, I want to get back to it. So at this point, Roots comes out. I don't even know when Roots comes out. I'll look it up and I'll put it on the screen. But so Roots comes out, and you guys had just moved into Detroit, and you had stole a bunch of groceries coming home. You get chased, but the mom of the family tells them, stop, leave them people alone. And so they stopped. And then my mom went to Cody for one day and then quit because she got chased.
It could have been longer than that, but it was so short. To me, it was one day.
She went back and got her GED like 10 years later. Yeah.
I got chased out of the school too, and I eventually quit too. So I tried as long as I could, and eventually I got into a fight, and I had to leave the school in the middle of winter in my shorts, running over snowbanks to get home. So yeah, it was rough.
So at this point, everyone's still around. Mike, Brian, Russ, Kirk, Cookie, Leo, and Yvonne are still in Detroit, but not living with you guys.
Right, and this is a pivotal point in all our lives. This is when everything starts to branch, right? So at this point in time, me and Russell end up going into Royal Oak. We're walking through Royal Oak, and we end up stealing a wallet out of a car. That wallet ends up having like $1,000 in cash. It was I don't know. Anyways, we split up the money. Jimmy Mernan was my friend. He ended up dying, but we ended up splitting up the money. He ended up doing a drug deal with an undercover agent, and they ended up calling me and Russell. They called me on the phone and said, yeah, we want to talk to you about the money you stole. And I said, what money? I don't know what you're talking about. And they said, you stole the wallet out of a car, blah, blah, blah. I go, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I hung up. Well, the cops were listening on that conversation, and my friend ends up doing time, and my mom hears about the phone call from the police and ends up just going berserk. So she puts us in the car and literally drops us off at the shop, my dad's shop. At the time.
So slow down. So Jimmy Mernan gets sold drugs to undercover, and then and then while that happens, you get notified from the cops that they want to hear about this wallet you took.
Yeah.
Okay. So he had dimed you out.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they couldn't get to us because from day one, even on the phone, I denied it, and they didn't have proof. So they couldn't even. So
then they contact your mom, and then she freaks out and drops you and Russ off at Grandpa's shop, which is where?
Yeah. My mom says they didn't do it and hang up the phone. She stuck up for us, so they couldn't prosecute us. But anyway, they dropped us off at Royal Oak at Tony's Auto Shop on Main Street, Royal Oak. 1010 South Main was the address at the time. It was before 696 was built. 10 Mile was a 2-lane road, blacktop. 696 didn't even go through there yet. It was from Hilton to Woodward, and then the zoo was there, but it still was a 2-lane road.
Is 1010 South Main still there?
No, right now it's condominiums. They built big condominiums, and they blocked off the street that went down the street was California Street.
Those are townhouses, and they're mad expensive.
Townhouses, yes, you're right, Doug. They are.
Yep. She drops you off at the shop because she's done with you guys stealing.
Yep.
So, only you and Russ?
Yeah, at the time.
Because of the theft, because of the police.
Yep.
So now
that's when I started. Yeah.
So now Brian, Kirk, and my mom are together because my mom's probably has a lot to do with raising them.
Well, at the time, my mom was looking for a reason probably to get rid of a couple kids, and since we were so bad, she figured I'd drop Mike and Russ off to take the pressure off me.
Right, because Joe didn't have any kids with him.
Yeah, at the time, Dad had my stepbrothers, and he was already married to a lady named Jerry Blake. And this is where the Blakes come into the picture.
Okay, so during this time where you go to Detroit with Carlos, Joe marries Jerry Blake, and the Blake boys are her kids and are living with him. So he has none of his kids with him. He's raising Jerry Blake's kids when she drops you and Russ off.
Yes. And they lived in Royal Oak.
Lived in Royal Oak.
Off of Altadena.
I know Altadena. I dated a girl who lived there.
I know you know it. Yeah. And it was right by, I remember Keller wasn't too far from Altadena. I walked to school, so it was blocks from Keller.
Wait, did you go to Keller?
I did go to Keller, yeah.
Me and you went to the same middle school?
Yes, we did.
Keller Junior High, bro.
Yeah.
I can't believe that, Mike.
Oh, yeah.
What a trip.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So Joe did he marry Jerry Blake?
He was already married to her and living in Royal Oak with their stepkids.
And what were their stepkids' names?
Well, first it was Jerry Lee, the little one. Little blonde-headed with pigtails, Jerry Lee. Todd, and they were a towhead. Then there was Steve Blake. He was a towhead. Actually, Steve was an albino guy. And then there was Jim Blake.
So 4 kids?
Yeah.
Jerry Lee Blake, Todd Blake, Steve Blake, and Jim Blake. What's a towhead?
Towhead is completely white hair.
They call that a towhead?
Yeah, like it's blonde, but it's so blonde that it's almost white looking.
So they're all towheads?
Yeah.
Is there any albinos?
Yeah, one, Steve.
Whoa. So Grandpa's got 4 kids with him.
Yep.
And was Jerry Blake cool?
At first she was cool. She ended up being a wicked stepmother after this.
Corella DeVille.
Tensions got high. Tensions got really high. She liked Russ. She didn't like me. Russell sided with her kids, and I rebelled against her kids. Because the first day I went to the house, I knew I was in trouble. They did not like me. They didn't want anything to do with me.
And this house is still there on Altadena?
Yes, it is, actually.
Wow.
Can't remember the address, but I could probably take you over there.
Yeah, we'll do a drive.
Closer to, what is that, Gardenia, or is that?
There's Gardenia. Yeah. Is 11.5.
Yeah, I think it was close to Gardenia, not a couple blocks from Gardenia.
So now you and Russ only are with the Blakes.
Yes.
So
we're going to the shop.
So Brian, Kirk, and my mom won't have many memories of the Blakes.
Yes, they will. Later on, I'll tell you that.
Okay. So those 3 are still with Grandma, who's probably still in and out a lot?
No. At this time, she tried to make a family work. She worked for Chrysler. She'd go to work every day. Carlos would do whatever he did, like took her money and went and did heroin and stuff. And that's the house where the detectives, now at the time Roots was out, me and Russell were stealing. Me and Russell were going through the neighborhood and breaking into houses and just stealing what we could. We're going through an all black neighborhood in the middle of daylight, walking into homes and trying to get what we could to steal for weed or food or anything.
Okay.
And this went on for months. We were breaking into cars. We were doing anything we could for cash to get weed or get food. Now, at this time, the undercover agents. Matter of fact, our landlord worked for the FBI and had Carlos under surveillance the whole time. So they would watch us do this, but they would leave us alone. They wouldn't mess with us. They watched us steal stereos out of cars and everything. We found out this later. But now at this time, Carlos was really heavy into heroin. This is when I went and pumped gas to make money, and I got gas on me. Then he asked me how I got gas on me, and I lied and said I saw this trailer because he told me not to go get a job because I kept on telling him I want to go get a job. He goes, you can't get a job, you're too young. So he was against me working somewhere, but I wanted to work so bad, get food for the family, because he wouldn't. And he literally beat me with a belt, my bare butt, until my butt bled from the belt. And Russell didn't get a beating like I did. Russell had to read the encyclopedia or something in his room. So he wanted my little butt for a reason. I don't know why. Like it welted up so bad. And I'm only 12 until I felt blood on my hand and looked, and it was on my hand. And then sent me in the room. And then I had to read an entire newspaper. I don't know what that was all about. But anyway, from that point on, when me and Russell left, they still stayed there. And I don't really know what was going on at the time, but Cookie ended up moving with us in the Royal Oak house. Not Kirk and Brian. Kirk and Brian stayed with Mom. Mom and Kirk and Brian moved to Annabelle.
Oh, really? Time. So they moved to Annabelle, without Carlos?
Yeah, no, with Carlos.
Wow.
It started without Carlos. So my mom has this thing. She has the typical abusive.
Yeah. She goes back to him.
Yeah. So we live with Carlos. Now, at the time, we lived with my dad when we moved into Royal Oak. This was the year that Leo got married to Tammy, because I remember them getting married and us having, the pre-party and everything, and her coming down the steps in that house with her dress.
Really?
And at the time, she was very beautiful, and Leo was like the top of his game athlete. They won first state in Michigan for speed skating. They were pro athletes, both of them, and both at the peak of their lives. I mean, it was probably the best moment in their lives being together. They were both champions. They both looked good. She was the typical cheerleader. He was the typical jock, Prom queen and king. And, it was good times back then. Leo made good money at the shop. At the time, he was retagging cars, Mustangs.
So Leo, he hadn't been arrested at this point for anything, really?
No, Leo was slick. He didn't get arrested until way later on in life, when we were in our 20s. He was in his 30s, I think, when he got arrested in California for grand theft auto. Finally, they caught up to him. He did a 6-year stint out in LA.
He moves. So you guys are in Royal Oak on Altadena with Grandpa and Jerry Blake and the family. My mom was with Brian and Kirk and Grandma on
eventually they moved to Annabelle.
During
this time period, I don't know how soon that was, because I was going through my whole thing with the Blakes.
Right. So there's a lot going on for you. But eventually, my mom leaves Brian and Kirk with Grandma and moves in with you guys on Altadena.
I'm pretty sure she stayed with us for a little while there and said, this ain't working.
Okay. So she tried it. It wasn't working. Yeah. She moves back with them. And Grandma was trying to make things happen. Carlos, you said it started off without Carlos, but then she let Carlos back in on Annabelle.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this, how old is Kirk at this point, like the youngest?
Well, let's see. If I was say in 7th or 8th grade at the time, I was at Keller, right? It was a middle school at the time.
Right. So you're 8th grade. You're 13.
I might have been a little younger than that.
So you're either 12 or 13. Yeah. So you're 12 or 13.
Yeah.
That means Kirk is what? Because he was born in 70. So he's 6 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And he's with Carlos and Grandma Bobby.
Yeah.
And my mom moved with you guys and then probably moved back.
Yeah.
Okay. At this point, it's 1976, 77. My mom is 16, 17 years old, 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. So
She's starting to become a young woman.
Right. So Tammy and Leo get married. So Leo moves away. He's doing his, Leo's with Tammy doing their thing.
Yeah.
They didn't live with you guys.
Yeah. No, they didn't.
Where's Yvonne?
They lived in a small apartment on 10 Mile near the shop. Now, where's Yvonne at? She's gone. She's with Jim Williams, Danny's brother, and they live in Florida somewhere.
Oh, so they moved to Florida.
Yeah. They came back and they ended up living in East Point, right across from East Point High School.
I remember.
Eventually.
So, all right. So then now what happens from Altadena with you guys?
Altadena, Dad gets mad, ends up blowing up, he literally picked up a picture window and threw it out he lifted up a coffee table and threw it out a picture window, knocked the phone off the damn thing. They end up splitting up for a while. So me and Russell end up living with my dad, with our uncle. He's not even really technically our uncle, but Uncle Frank in Detroit. Now we're back in the ghetto. We're literally on Finkel and Telegraph area.
Okay.
So now Dad ends up, sleeping with a few women, all that. Ends up getting back with Jerry Blake, and we move on Trinity, which is off of Burt Road and Finkel and Linden. So it would be Linden. Linden's the next couple streets down from Finkel. So it's Linden and Trinity right off of Burt Road. Burt Road's the next street over. At the time, I went to Harding Middle School or whatever. But anyways, they moved there.
So you stopped going to Keller, moved while you were still in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, moved over on Burt Road, Linden, Trinity, and you're going to what was the school you went to? Harding?
I went to Harding at the time. Yeah.
Okay, so he broke up with Jerry, but then
now, what year do you think this is? I think it's 76.
It's got to be 76. 76 or 77, one of those.
Matter of fact, it is 76 because I remember us having the 1976 party with the bicentennial party.
Okay, so then so he broke up with Jerry Blake and they moved.
So what happens was Jerry Blake ends up moving in, and the Blakes, and they end up it's not working out, and they split up. But during the time he was with Jerry Blake at the shop, he has an affair with Pearl.
Oh, really? Who is Shannon's mom?
Pearl comes in to get her car fixed, which she did have a gremlin, speaking of gremlins. And Dad fixes her car and ended up fixing her. I don't know. Ended up dating her.
It's horrible.
And
I recently just met Pearl at the Christmas party.
Yeah.
I swear I knew her, I guess, when I was 5 a few times, but
at one time she was very beautiful. She had blonde hair and she was from Florida. Okay. Shannon was born, we lived in Madison Heights at the time.
So he was with Pearl for like 5 years before Shannon was born?
He was with her for a while. Yeah, he was with her for a while.
Okay, so he cheats on Jerry with Pearl at the shop.
Well, yeah, you could say that because eventually Dad and Pearl end up getting a place.
So he left Jerry for Pearl.
Yeah, and at that time, I think I moved back to my mom on Annabelle while
they were still on Annabelle with Brian and Kirk.
I moved back there.
And was my mom there?
Yes, got into a huge fight with Carlos. I threw a shovel at the door. He grabbed me by my throat. At this time, I was young and rebellious, and I was fighting a lot. I was a street fighter. So I didn't weigh much, or I wasn't big in stature, but I'll tell you what, I was a scrapper at that time. So Carlos said something, and I said, you know what, F you. And then Carlos threw me up against the wall by my throat. That's when I ran outside, and I grabbed a shovel, and I said, come on outside now, because I evened the playing field. This guy was a big dude. He was muscular and he was big. wasn't very tall. I remember he was about 5'9", 5'8", but he was giant. So I threw the shovel, he shut the door, and the shovel just missed his eye. The next day, Dad went over there looking for him, and he was hiding. He was deathly afraid of Dad. He knew Dad was going to kill him. So he hid under the bed like a little weasel. But after that, I moved out and never went back. I just moved out on my own.
When was that?
That was, so I moved back with my dad at that time, which was, I want to say 77, 78, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And then that's when there's a picture of me and Russell by that Javelin AMX, and I got long hair, and Russell's got long hair. That was 79. I was 15 years old at the time.
So where'd you move into from Annabelle?
Mount Clemens.
And he's living with Pearl?
Yeah, in this little shack right on Jefferson, which now is a mansion.
So it was with Pearl and Mount Clemens. Off Jefferson?
Right on Jefferson, where Maple Hill and Jefferson meet, but we're actually right on Jefferson, 2 houses off of Maple Hill.
So now you're living with them. Who else is living with you?
Just me, Russell, Dad, and Pearl.
Oh, okay. And then Brian and Kirk and my mom are still on Annabelle.
Now I'm trying to think of where your mom is at this time, because
well, my mom's still with the boys. She never left the boys to this point.
Right. That's right. Okay. At the time, I think she was, I don't know if she was with Doug Hubert. No, she was broken up with Doug Hubert at that time.
So yeah. Doug Hubert was just a family friend?
Yeah, and his mom always fed us. Like if we needed a place to sleep or go to, she would feed us and all that. But
when does Doug Hubert enter the picture?
Doug Hubert is on 50 West Granite.
Really?
He was Leo's friend. They called him Priest for some reason. I don't know why.
So
and he used to abuse Cookie. He was a fucker. And later on in life, when I remember him doing that, I thought, why do I even like this guy? This guy's a punk. And then I never talked to him from probably when I was 15 years old on after that.
You remember when I saw him at the shop with you and I was so mad that I was tearing up?
Yeah, I think I remember that.
It was the shop on Madison Heights. It was
Madison Heights?
Yeah, it was on right off the freeway. Yeah, right off the freeway. And we went to the shop once and he was there. You were like, oh, Doug Hubert's here.
That was my shop, right? Or was it?
Yeah.
And then he pulled up in a car. He had a tow truck dropping a car off for some reason.
And I was like, I don't want to see him.
Yeah.
And all I knew is I didn't like him. And he had gone to jail for
child molestation.
I
think it was first-degree criminal sexual conduct.
And he had just gotten out.
Stepdaughter, yeah.
Yeah, but I was already like 15 or 16 or something when that happened. So, when he got out of jail. So I remember growing up at Joyce Hubert's house. So we were close with the Huberts for a while. So you're saying 50 West Granite. So like in 1967, he was around from that time, Leo's friend. Now my mom, Brian and Kirk are staying still on Annabelle. When do they move off of Annabelle?
You know, at this time, I'm in California.
Oh, really? So when did you leave?
I left when, we probably won't put that on video. We scrounged up enough money with Cookie's help, and we took a Greyhound bus to California, and we got dropped off there with, when we were at California, I had $5 in my pocket. And we ended up.
When was this?
This was in, I think at that time it was 81 or 82. I think it was 82.
I was born in 82 though.
Yeah.
Okay. So
somewhere around there. After your when you got baptized, 'cause I remember going to your baptism.
Oh,
so
really?
It was right around there. Yeah.
Okay, then we skipped a bunch because we went from 77.
Yeah, we skipped a little bit. And don't forget the years could be off a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a 5-year chunk here where my mom's on Annabelle. You moved from Altadena to Mount Clemens with.
Oh, I know what happened. From Mount Clemens, Shannon was born. Then we go out to California. Me and Dad, Shannon and Pearl. And
yeah,
Russell.
but that's still 1981, bro. 1980.
So we moved out to California. So there's a big chunk missing somewhere.
All right, so 1977-ish. You guys are still around. You and Russ move in with like at Altadena with the Blakes, and you're a year or two, whatever that happens, and you guys move from there to Finkel and whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the Blakes.
With the Blakes. Then he cheats on.
He meets Pearl.
He meets Pearl
during
that period, and then they get a place together eventually. My mom is still with Grandma Bobby and Brian and Kirk.
As far as I know, I think she moved out of that house. I don't know where she went.
Probably with Wendy.
I remember going there and she wasn't there.
Yeah, all I know is my mom never really lived on her own. She was at home her entire life except for a brief period with Wendy, with like Wendy and Joyce Hubert.
Well, she did live with me and your dad and I want to say Russ on John R. when we moved out of that first house when my dad said I'm leaving on Los Angeles. Me and Cookie got a house on John R.
Okay, so
now, your dad, I don't think your dad officially lived with us. I think he lived with your dad, with his dad or something, his parents still.
Yeah, my dad still lived with his parents until until my mom was about to have me. He didn't move in until 1981, late 81, early 82.
So me and Cookie got our own house. I actually talked the guy into getting I usually get deposits from people back then I used to get the keys without a deposit and a handshake and just tell them I'll fix up the house, whatever I do for the deposit. It was easy back then to do that. So on John R., me and Cookie got a place. That's when that epileptic girl came in.
Oh, so in John R., you guys got a place, and there was an epileptic girl who overdosed and died.
Yeah.
I
wasn't living there at the time.
Was it heroin or LSD or something?
It was, I think it was heroin.
But this is not on Los Angeles.
No.
Okay.
This is on John R. and Hazel Park.
All right. So my mom moves out for a period of time. The first time my mom moves out, basically, and gets away from. And so Brian and Russ Brian and Kirk are still with Grandma Bobby.
Yeah.
Okay. So who's Grandma Bobby with?
Carlos.
He's still with Carlos.
Yeah.
So was she with when you guys left for California, was she still with Carlos?
Yeah.
So when I was born, Grandma's still with Carlos.
Yeah.
Wow. So there's a couple missing years there. My mom meets my dad in the summer of 1980.
It might have been the fall, right? It might have been the fall.
Here's the thing. Yeah, right, because she said that they knew each other for 6 months before she got pregnant.
Yeah, because I remember the parking lot and everything had snow on it when I first met your dad.
Oh, really?
I remember the layout of that restaurant and everything.
So in 1980, so the summer of 1980, so you met my dad before my mom did.
Well, we knew him at the same time, but I was a little closer with him because I was in the back with him.
So how did did my mom get the job waitressing first and then you came in as a busboy?
Yeah, at the time, her and him did know each other, but she was a waitress and he was a cook. And I think there was this chemistry, but no one wanted to say anything yet. It was too new. So when I got there, I said, "You like my sister, huh?"
So you are on Los Angeles with my mom. With who? Just you, my mom,
Russell.
That's it?
Yep.
But Grandma Bobby's with Brian and Kirk. My dad was already working at Johnny's.
Yes.
And then my mom goes and gets a job because Grandpa says, I'm going to California, you can come or stay. And you say, we're staying.
Yep.
So you guys stay. This is 1980, you're 16. My mom's 19.
Yeah.
She goes and gets a job at Johnny's to help pay rent.
Yes.
She gets you a job there?
Yeah. I was still doing work at the shop, and I was working there at night.
At Grandpa's shop?
Tony's shop, yeah.
At Tony's.
But I ended up just leaving Tony's and going right to Johnny's and just picking up any hours I could.
Just because it was a better environment, you just like being
close
there better?
Close by the house. Yeah, close by the house. And near food.
So funny, bro.
You know, you had to do what you had to do.
It's so funny how food is such an important component in the decisions you guys made. Dude,
I'm so glad
I can only imagine. Dude, when I cooked in Hawaii, it was the best job ever because I'm surrounded by food. At any time I could throw a rasher of bacon in my mouth or eat a bagel with cream cheese. And it was like, it is what it is. So you become a busboy there. You get close to my dad first, and then eventually you're like, you like my sister.
So
what do you remember about my dad when you met him?
Well, I remember he had this sort of a swagger, and seemed like he was shy but yet confident around other guys.
That's what I hear. Shy. Dude, my mom, everybody says the same thing, that my dad was very confident and people loved him, and which is weird because he didn't have a foot. And my mom says that my dad, literally in my intro to my episode 1 background, I have a line where I say, oftentimes the first thing my dad would say to somebody is he would lift up his pant leg and knock on his leg and show people right away that he didn't have a foot. My mom said that it may have been because he wanted people to know right away, because if they didn't mind, like if they got over it, he knew he could trust them right away. Like if he knew them and there was a secret that he didn't have a foot, like it would, you know what I mean? He didn't want them to find out later. She said oftentimes the first thing he would do is knock on his foot and tell people he's got a fake foot. And
well, I must not have been that important because he never told me until I found out later.
Really?
And a big surprise, yeah.
Really? So how do you remember that?
I do. I came home, and at the time I was staying with your mom and Doug, your dad.
Wait, so they were together?
Yeah, they lived on a house.
So you mean to tell me you worked with my dad for years and didn't know he didn't have a right foot?
No. When I came home, they had been a couple for a long time, and I don't know if you were born yet. I don't even think you were born yet, but they had a place in Hazel Park. And I might have left and came back. You know, my life is sporadic. And I was staying with them, and I had the keys, and I opened up the door and looked, and I saw a leg up against the wall. And I thought, that's funny. You know, is someone playing a joke, or what is that? Your dad comes out of the room fully exposing his nub.
He had a nub. It was like a fist. It looked like this.
It looked like he could beat you like with a baseball bat, and he made sure you knew he could do that. That was a big thing with him. He could go bat, 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 with that foot.
Dude, I grew up with him smacking me in the face, and I would try to grab it, and he's going like this, and I could never get it. It was lightning fast, bro.
It was. He could go bam, 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 bam.
Well, can you imagine walking around with a 20-pound weight on your leg and then taking it off and being able to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he shocked me. I mean, I about fell over. And he was laughing. He got a big kick out of that.
So here's the thing, though. We skipped some time there because I want to stop this at when I was born. So we basically just jumped to the gun and we're almost done. But my mom moves into Los Angeles with you and Russell.
Yep.
But Brian and Kirk are still with Grandma Bobby.
Yep.
That's when Grandpa decides to leave the house. So now you guys have to pay the rent.
Yeah.
So my mom goes and gets a job at Johnny's. You get a job at Johnny's. You meet my dad right away because he's the cook, right? Probably the only cook, or at least one of the only cooks.
Yeah, he was the main cook.
So my dad at this time in 1980 is 17.
Was he?
Yep. My dad was born in 63.
He's so much older than me.
So he's 17 years old. He's born in 63. He's 1 year older than you.
Wow.
So my dad is 17, meet you guys. You introduce him to my mom or hook them up or whatever. My mom says they dated for 6 months before she got pregnant. So she got pregnant in May of 81, which means it was the fall of 1980. So it was a super hot summer that year. I know that the summer of 80 was a record breaker. And she's living on Los Angeles, and they knew each other for 6 months or dated for 6 months. So my mom must not have been in Los Angeles for long. And then you were living with her. So what happened when you left Los Angeles?
We went over to that house on John R., me and Cookie. Russell fell out of the picture. He ended up not being able to pay rent.
Okay, so Russ goes off on his own. You and my mom leave.
I'm sorry, we did drag Russell over to that house. We did.
Okay, so you guys leave Los Angeles to get your own place.
on
where?
John R.
On John R.
John R. between Woodward Heights and 10 Mile.
Okay, so then she's already dating my dad now for about 6 months.
Coming over. We're listening to Physical Graffiti from Led Zeppelin. And then they end up getting that other girl for extra money for the rent. She used to go to Tony's shop. So we met her through Tony's shop somehow.
Donnie. What's that chick's name, dude? She was there my whole childhood.
Was she?
Yeah, that lady who had the daughter who was my age or a year or two older. Her name was Dawn.
I can't even think of her name.
She was my mom's best friend.
Yeah, for a while they were close.
It was a flat.
I wouldn't say best friend because Wendy's always her best friend.
Yeah, Wendy's always been the best friend, but she was
at the time they were buddies. They were buddies.
So she moved in with that girl. So you guys move on to John R. with my mom. My mom and dad are dating. And then my mom gets pregnant. My dad leaves, probably under the influence of his dad, who never approved of that relationship. Yeah. Grandpa Joe finds out and then goes and knocks on my dad's door and tells him.
This wasn't at your dad's house. This was we're still on Los Angeles. Before Dad leaves to California. Okay. Dad sets it straight with him. Now, I was in the car, and I don't know exactly what was said. But from what I hear, I was watching my dad. My dad was very physical with your dad. My dad towered over your dad and was threatening. Like, his body language was very threatening. And your dad did not want anything to do with my dad.
Where was this? Because you were in the car, so you drove somewhere. We
pulled up to the Los Angeles house.
Oh, okay. And so my dad was at my mom's house.
Yes, at the time. And then my dad called him out on the street to talk to him. Or they didn't want to talk in the house because Cookie was there or something. But it ended up being on the sidewalk, right from that view that you gave me in that camera. They were right on that sidewalk.
Okay, well then here's the thing, because if that's true, she got pregnant in 81 in May. So they weren't living together yet then, unless he had moved into Los Angeles.
They weren't. There was a big thing because he wanted to leave your mom. He didn't want to be with your mom at that time. And
when she got pregnant.
And I think it was a big influence from his dad, from your grandpa.
Well, then here's the thing. But you guys moved to the Los Angeles place together. That was after Los Angeles? I mean, you moved to the John R. place after Los Angeles.
Yeah, we did.
So that means my mom got pregnant. My dad wanted to leave her. Grandpa checked my dad.
And Grandpa takes off.
And that's when he left.
He leaves on Los Angeles.
Oh, so wait. So I had always heard the way my mom told it is that he had left and said, "I'm going to California. Come with me or stay." You guys decided to stay. That's why she went to get a job at Johnny's. But now that's not the case.
No, this is the case. Dad, me, Cookie, and Pearl were living on Los Angeles with Russell. I went to Madison High School at the time. Or I went to Fitzgerald, I'm sorry, at the time. Dad ends up saying, "Hey, listen, you guys want to stay or leave? I'm leaving." Before he leaves, he has a talk with your dad.
Oh, really?
On Los Angeles. Actually, it wasn't right on that view. I can tell you right where they were standing, and I don't know how this happened. I think they walked down the street. But it was right at the corner of Warner and Los Angeles and they were talking there, and I was in a car, and I don't know, I think I was in my dad's car. I think at the time I was still working at the shop with my dad. I hadn't yet got that job at Johnny's.
It can't be, because you introduced my parents.
I did.
So you introduced my parents. You were working at Johnny's when you introduced them.
I was working 2 jobs. I was working for my dad during the day and Johnny's at night at Purpose.
Okay, so you're saying this is before you started working full-time there.
Yeah, because I would work at Johnny's at night. Finally, I just gave up the shop when my dad left.
Okay, so what you're saying is you were working part-time, you hooked my parents up, 6 months goes by.
At the time, I bust tables at night, yeah.
Right, okay, and then you hook them up. Then she gets pregnant 6 months later, which means you're still not working full-time at Johnny's when she's pregnant with me.
Right.
So then he leaves. So she didn't go get that job because he was leaving. She got that job just to get the job.
Yeah. She was already working. She had to make money. She was working there making money.
She was living with Grandpa and Pearl at Los Angeles when she meets my dad, and when you hook them up, they start dating. She gets pregnant. He says, I'm out of here. Joe says, I'm out of here. My dad tries to leave. Joe checks my dad, and then there's speculation as to what exactly happened. Apparently my dad took a few days to a month and then came.
He did. Now your dad was getting pressure from me too, because at the time I was just a busboy. I really didn't know your dad that good because I was out front and I was bussing tables. After my dad left, I told Doug, your dad, I said, listen, I want to go full time here now. I'm going to go any hours I can get. He said, I'm glad you said that. And he fired some guy and got me in there. Your dad fired someone for me to get back there. So I get back there. Now me and your dad are getting close at this time, like buddies, really close. Your dad is coming to our house and partying a lot, spending the night over there. And this is when he decides to stay, I think. I think because... Oh,
I see. So he wanted to leave. He gets checked by Grandpa. He's still like up in the air because I'm sure his parents are pressuring him to drop that whole thing. But then you come on full time at the restaurant. You guys get super close. He's partying at the house. He's with my mom. She was pregnant, and eventually he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna stay.
This is gonna be my family." Because I think me getting close to him and him coming to our house every night, and me and your dad got really close. We got drunk together. We did a lot of stuff, crazy stuff.
Yeah, together. You talk about my dad differently than Brian and Kirk and Russ did.
It was different. I think I saw the part of your dad that they didn't see.
Right.
Me and your dad were real tight. Like we were buddies. Like getting drunk, smoking weed, doing all that stuff. And your dad
Did you ever do coke with my dad?
No, I don't think I remember your dad doing that. I could look back at my memory. There could have been a time, but.
So, all right. So then you guys get real close, and then my dad decides, all right, I'm going to do this thing. So you guys are still living in Los Angeles when my dad makes the determination, because he was still partying with you guys. Okay.
Yeah, because I remember him and I got real close, and Cookie, and it was just good times. It was like we're just partying.
But now here's the thing I got to reconcile. You moved from Los Angeles to John R. with my mom.
Yeah, we did, because we couldn't afford that rent over there.
Okay, so she's already with my dad. She's already pregnant. He's already decided to stay.
He still wasn't living, though.
But he still wasn't living there. He just had a pregnant girlfriend.
I think your dad literally had to rip himself away from his other family.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
To come...
He was real close with them.
Give up his life. They were probably telling him, you're going to ruin your life, just like I told Sarah, just like I told Mikey.
Sure, because my mom was not a very great prospect. She comes from a dirt poor family that's full of violence and criminals and drugs. And his dad was an engineer at General Dynamic, a World War II vet. You know what I mean? So everyone was going to college, and then all of a sudden he's with this hillbilly from the dirt from Detroit.
It's the Tilley curse. It's like with Doreen's family. When they first met me, they're like, here's this guy, he's got this lion tattoo on his arm, he's skinny, he's a hillbilly, he's doesn't have a good job.
He was a cook, Same exact.
Yeah, I mean, he's
it's
a
like,
cook for crying out loud.
So then you and my mom moved to John R. She's with my dad, but they're not living together.
Yeah, your dad was over a lot.
But that lasted very shortly, because when I was born on that flat in Breckenridge.
At this time, yes. At this time, your mom, your dad, and your mom, there was no room for me there at that time. They were growing together, so I ended up leaving, and I think they ended up first getting that house that I was telling you about in Hazel Park off of George Street. And that was on the other side. That was closer to DeQuinder.
Okay.
And it was DeQuinder, then there was another side street. They lived between that side street and another side street. There was a park right across the street. They lived there. That's when I found out about his leg. They let me stay there until I shit in their tub downstairs, and they didn't like that.
Hold on a second. So they let you stay there, and then what happened?
I tried to get in the house, and I didn't have my key. So I had to get in. The only way I could get in was the basement. And they had a laundry tub down there, and I shit in the tub, and I left it. I didn't clean it up. And I left. I don't know what happened. But your dad had to clean that up. After that, I wasn't allowed back over there.
So I was born in 82, in February of 82, and they were already living in Hazel Park I want to say...
At this time, I think they had already moved to... Is it Breckenridge over there by
yeah, it's
Webb?
Breckenridge.
Yeah.
Because they went from Breckenridge, then we moved to Buckingham. Breckenridge is where Leo broke into the house. And I remember...
Mom's nurse lived downstairs.
Pulled into the house. It had an all glass front. The house was all windows in the front, and it was shaped like an A-frame with windows.
Yeah, it's probably still there.
And I remember pulling up and my mom freaking out. The door was open and it was dark out, and the lights were on and the doors were open. And my dad said, "Stay in the car." And he ran to the car. It must have been 4. And he ran to the house and to check it out while I stayed in the car. My mom was scared, crying. And the rumor was that Leo and my dad worked out some kind of insurance deal where he wasn't. My mom thinks it was that my dad wanted Leo to do help him with an insurance job on the house, but Leo went overboard. In
reality, Leo talked your dad into that.
Sure. Yeah, either way. But my dad was a scammy.
Your dad was always good for a good scam.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Good down for a good scam. But then,
that comes from your dad's dad. Your dad's dad.
Yeah, he was a scammer. He was a lifetime kleptomaniac.
Yeah.
So that was Breckenridge. So I see. So you moved out. So when you moved into that place with my mom on John R. Her and my dad were getting close, and eventually you lost that place on John R. And her and my dad moved in together in a flat with.
Now at this time, I think is when me and Russell went to California on our own on a bus.
So you left with Russ. This would have been 82, 81, 81, late 81. You move out to California with Russ. My mom and dad move in together. Where are Brian and Kirk? They're still with Grandma Bobby?
Yep, on Annabelle.
On Annabelle. And you go out to California shortly after I'm born because I just got baptized.
Yep.
So that's 82.
We stay with our uncle.
And Grandpa is where? Is he still in Detroit? He's still with Pearl.
Grandpa.
He's still with Pearl when I'm born.
At that time, wait a second. At that time, they were in Madison Heights on Harwood Street. They had Shannon because me and Russell did live there for a while. Russell tore up Madison Heights, man. Yeah, so there was a period of time when I moved out of that house on John R. Me and Russell went to live with my dad in Madison Heights.
I see. And then that's when my mom and dad got together, moved in together. and then I was born. They got married shortly thereafter. They got married after I was born, like a year after I was born. Probably because his parents made him marry her, and then because she had a baby, and then okay, well that gets us to where I'm alive, and you guys move out to California, which is a whole nother. Our next phone call will be the life of
Shannon.
Shannon had already been born.
Yeah, and she's in Madison Heights.
She got born. Shannon was born when you start working at you're working at Johnny's when Shannon is born.
Actually, yeah, that's the last school I ever went to was Madison High School.
Okay. Oh, you didn't graduate?
No, I got my GED in 2002.
Okay. So Shannon's born. He's with Pearl probably till she's 5. And so that in 1985, I'm 3. He's still in Detroit with Pearl, or Madison Heights or wherever. He's still in Michigan.
Madison Heights. There's a picture of them on that motorcycle.
Yeah.
They were still in Madison Heights when we left.
And then you and my Aunt Alice are named my godparents. And then my life starts. Huh.
Yeah.
Wow, dude. That's it. We just did 2.5 hours. So I want to end this recording. So I just want to say, dude, I love you. You're super important to me. Thank you for doing this and helping kickstart this. This could turn into something great, and I'm looking forward to it. And you're the best, dude. Thanks, man.
I love you too, and maybe we'll take this out on the road after you get all the stories.
I can't wait, bro. Love you, dude. Have a good night. Give my love to Doreen.
You too. I will.
All right, bro.